Hey folks, Gio here from the Red Letters Dialogues. A few days ago, we lost some of our brethren from the body of Christ during the Umpqua Community College massacre. And what has been proclaimed loudly through the media circles and other outlets is that we need further gun control. Obama began the politicization of the matter when he himself said through his bully pulpit last Thursday that we need to politicize, his word, not mine, politicize the events of the Umpqua Community College massacre in order to enact greater gun controls. And I would advocate that instead of employing gun control or understanding that they mean greater restrictions, what they mean is almost an outright ban on firearms. And I'll explain shortly. But in truth, what has not been mentioned and has been conveniently hidden by the mainstream media is the true narrative of this case. And it is the increasing persecution against Christianity and Christians in the United States of America. Why is this the actual narrative from the Umpqua Community College shooting, the viewer might ask? Well, it is known now through eyewitness testimony that the shooter lined most of the students up and asked them if they were Christians or not. Those that affirmed that they were received a bullet to the head, and those that denied were shot in the leg. Now, much has been said throughout the past few days and the last week about the motivations of the homicidal maniac. And we're not going to enter into that, but nonetheless, this is the main point of this video and also the main point, the main narrative that we should take from this entire debacle, this entire tragedy. Yet, the secularists among us would have us focus our eyesight on a mere instrument. They would state that we need to eliminate firearms. Many news outlets, especially on the internet, were finally saying it is time to eradicate the Second Amendment of the United States. And Barack Obama implicitly agreed. Some might state, whom viewed his speech from the White House last Thursday, that is not what he said. No, he did not say it explicitly, but he did say it implicitly. During the speech, he said that we should be more like Great Britain and Australia, whom have seen a decline in firearm-related deaths. But what is the common denominator? What is the common thread between these two nations? Well, they both enacted outright gun bans. He conveniently omitted that? No, he simply lied, as well as lied about gun owners wanting greater restrictions. And also lied, prevaricated, satanically might I add, about the states that have stringent, onerous gun laws in the books experiencing lower crime rates than other states, which is also an absolute farce. And he omitted the fact that on average, 760,000 American citizens a year employ firearms in the defense of life, liberty, and limb. And this from Gary Kleck, criminologist from FSU. That's right, 760,000 times a year. American citizens employ firearms in the defense of life, liberty, property, and limb. Why is it that Obama did not mention this? Why is it that he did not go before the camera and state, folks, there are greater numbers of people, law-abiding citizens that employ firearms for good than there are instances where criminals employ guns for evil. Let's leave the Second Amendment alone. Let's provide further education on firearm use because a society with more guns is actually safer. And I would allude to studies by persons such as John Lott, double T at the end, where he has also published a book called More Guns, Less Crime, which proves exactly everything opposing, contradictory to what Obama stated in his declarations last week from the White House. As a matter of fact, he mocked persons that believe this according to the statistical evidence. The FBI, according to its uniform crime statistics, proves through statistical evidence, numerical evidence, that throughout the last 7 to 10 years, we have experienced a general decline in homicides where a firearm was used. It is at its lowest point in our history. Why didn't he mention that? Why didn't the Obama sycophants in the media and other politicians and talking heads mention this? Because they want greater restrictions. More tyranny is the name of the game for these people. Let us not forget that there are those in our society that would choose to believe the pontificators, such as Hussein Obama and others, as it pertains to the narrative that they are trying to peddle after the Umpqua Community College massacre, stating, yes, this is an issue of guns. We need to restrict gun usage. Many Christians have also bought into this prevarication, stating, I believe that we need to eliminate the Second Amendment of the United States. And then they claim that they do so for religious reasons, stating any Christian that owns firearms ought to be ashamed of themselves. Why? The reason that they give is because they state that they are not, quote, depending or trusting in God, end quote. And then they would look to Matthew chapter number 6 in order to prove their point. Sermon on the Mount, as is commonly known in theological circles, verse 25 and on, where Jesus says that we should not worry about what we should eat, how we should clothe. And he uses as examples the fowls of the air, how God provides for them, and also the flowers of the field. But if you look towards the end of that particular chapter, Jesus clarifies why he states what he states. Verse 34 states, therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day its own trouble. Christ was dealing with the issue of materialism and also being so preoccupied with the things of this world that it literally defines our existence, a problem of modern society. By the way, I would ask a rhetorical question to these people whom would accuse other Christians of being, that are firearm owners, of being cowards, by asking those very same people, do you trust in God for your daily sustenance? And they would most assuredly answer that they do. Then I would proceed to ask them, then why is it that you work on a daily basis? If you trust in God, why do you work? Then they would answer, because God has made me responsible to my family and also for myself, so that I may gather the daily sustenance. And I would say, absolutely, that is the case. Also, as it pertains to self-defense. Christ, God has not left us without the method to defend ourselves. And as a matter of fact, it is found in the Bible, and I can prove it through this very video. That is why we are publishing this through our website and also through youtube.com. Where might you find that? Some might ask. Luke chapter number 22. You'll find that this is right before Christ has been betrayed by Judas Iscariot and handed over to the religious authorities so that he may be handed to his imminent death. Verse 35 in chapter number 22 of the Gospel of Luke, Jesus asks the disciples, when I sent you without money bag, knapsack, and sandals, did you lack anything? So they said, nothing. Then he said to them, but now he who has a money bag, let him take it, and likewise a knapsack. And he who has no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. What? Jesus said to buy a weapon, to obtain a weapon? Absolutely. Jesus Christ would not leave us without defense, folks. God would not leave us with the legal means to defend ourselves and our families, because God knows that there is a criminal element out there that would try to destroy us. Furthermore, there is an element in society that would try to annihilate us because we are Christians. John 17, Jesus says, they hated them. Speaking about the world hating Christians, just as they hated me in his prayer to the Father. And he tells us, you are not of this world as I am not of this world. And since they hated me, they will hate you too. Matthew 24, he says, they will lead you up to tribunals and they will kill you for my name's sake. But Jesus also tells us that we must be very humble as doves, but also astute as serpents. What did he mean by that? We are engaging in a pilgrimage throughout this world that would seek our destruction. And we also have to defend ourselves if need be. If not, this verse would not appear. These verses would not appear in the scriptures. Jesus would have never told his disciples. He would have said, I don't permit I don't permit you to have weapons. Some might argue, Gio, but he was dealing with swords. No, the principle is the same. You have to defend yourselves. As a matter of fact, I would dare say that there are many Christians out there that experience some sort of cowardice because they espouse the aforementioned rebuff because they personally do not like firearms. And look, I'll respect that. If you are a person that does not like firearms, I completely respect that. But I do not respect that you would seek to repress another person's right to defend themselves, their lives, and their families. And it has also been known in the past that there have been cases, increasingly might I add, where there have been miscreants of society that absolutely abhor Christians entering into churches and wanting to do harm with firearms. And thankfully, there have been cases where congregants have been armed and have been able to stop that criminal act immediately without any loss of life. The Second Amendment to the United States is probably what many people have called, and I agree, America's first freedom, because without it, we wouldn't have the First Amendment to enjoy. Tyrants and other despots understand very well that an armed populace is one that can defend themselves from tyranny. Furthermore, with this increasing persecution in the United States, what should a Christian's answer be, being that the Umpqua Community College shooting is evidence of this, and also how politicians such as Obama and others are trying to guide our attention in other directions so that we won't focus on the increasing hostility against Christianity in our shores domestically. What should we do? Should our answer be a fatalist one, where many people say, I knew this was coming because the Bible informed me. This is Bible prophecy, therefore we should just allow it to happen. I am not a fatalist. I am not a person who believes in que sera, sera. I believe God makes me and every other single Christian responsible for disseminating the truth and helping others to find freedom through the truth. Otherwise, preaching the gospel would be absolutely futile. Otherwise, it would be futile that Jesus would inform his church that they have to go out, we have to go out and preach the gospel, because que sera, sera, those that are going to be lost are going to be lost, and those that are going to be saved are going to be saved. This is a Calvinist position, one that I utterly repudiate. More on that in a future video. But there's also ulterior motivations at play here with those that espouse that, especially Christians that espouse this. And I'll tell you why. Most of these people are unwilling to fight for the freedoms that others in other generations fought so that current Christians can enjoy. And they are cowards when they don't fight enough to assure that future generations, their own progeny, would enjoy the liberties that others sacrificed themselves for, their own lives for, so that we may enjoy it, future generations may enjoy it. That is absolutely a posture of cowardice. And let us not forget that Jesus does say also that cowards will not enter into the kingdom of heaven. I believe in the right of self-defense. I believe in the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, and I am an arduous defender of it. And I believe in our biblical right, which is supreme over all else, to defend ourselves, as we have just noted, through the scriptures, through Jesus' own words. Might I advise the viewer to rethink, if you have not obtained a firearm, that you do so now. A firearm is a beautiful thing. It's a symbol of freedom, symbol of liberty. It's also a clarion call to each and every one of us to remember the past and the implements that were used in order to obtain our freedom and the sacrifices that were undertaken in order to provide us with that freedom. For those of you that might still say or agree with Obama and his minions that the instrument is what is evil, you are repudiating what the Bible has to state. Because the Bible states that the problem is not the instrument, it is the heart. It is called sin. And it doesn't matter if you eliminate all of the firearms from society, man will still undertake criminality because evil is in his heart. It doesn't matter how many instruments you eradicate, whether they be knives, whether they be swimming pools, whether they be Ziploc bags or firearms, man will seek to undertake evil because it is in his heart. It doesn't matter how many humanistic, anthropocentric ideas are forwarded in order to try to create a utopia. Human beings are inherently what is wrong with humanity. We are birthed into sin, folks. The only thing that can regenerate us is called the gospel of Jesus Christ. But guess what? Since we are living in a secular nation now that swiftly told God, we don't want you here anymore, sin was no longer an appropriate, a truthful explanation of evil. Since man sought to himself for answers, man being an imperfect character, man being absolutely corrupt, all they are going to find are corrupt answers. And those answers will never ever satisfy, and they will never ever cure the ills, the pangs of society. Might I advocate to the Christians that think this way, maybe it's time that you adopt a new way of thinking, because you might be aligning yourselves with the secularist mantra and repudiating all the Bible has to state. The instrument is not evil, it is the human heart. And arduously defend the rights of those that employ these instruments for good and not focus exclusively, as the media does, because they absolutely sensationalize all these things. Why is it that they do not report on the more than 760,000 cases annually of Americans using firearms to defend themselves and others? Because it's not sensational. It doesn't attract viewers to the television screen. It doesn't attract listeners to the radio dial. That's why. Which is also an insult to the victims, if you think about it. They might shed crocodile tears before the listeners and before the viewers to give the impression that they are actually sympathetic, when they are doing is trivializing the event through their sensationalism, as do politicians such as Obama and his sycophants. Might I advocate that you consider buying a firearm and maybe speak to another person, another Christian, whom is an owner of firearms and an arduous defender of being able to keep and bear arms. As you'll notice, look up the statistics. They're readily available on the internet and through criminal studies, by the way, that states that have the most lax gun laws are the safest states and the safest localities. All the opposite is true. New York City, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Illinois, contrarian to what Obama stated, they have the strictest gun laws on the books, and yet they have the highest homicide rate yearly. Doesn't that tell you something? Absolutely. Maybe it's time we get over that fear and we learn to arm ourselves for two particular reasons. Number one, understanding that we are in danger. Christianity is being persecuted in the United States, and instead of adopting the fatalist attitude that says que sera, sera, and ignorantly decided not to be vigilant so that the same may not visit us in our shores, thinking persecution of Christians it's in remote places, it'll never arrive here, and we did not keep eternal vigilance to make sure it did not arrive in our shores. It's already here. Maybe we can actually do something about it now and defend ourselves. Learn to use a firearm and teach from a certified instructor, even from other congregates that you may know whom are firearm users themselves. Apply for a concealed carry permit, and if that is not available in your state, advocate for it. There is such a thing as law-abiding citizens. Many of us are individuals that respect the rule of law, and we have placed ourselves under the rule of law and do so in a lawfully abiding way. Otherwise, what we are going to be left with is an outright ban on the very thing that can help us to curb criminality, and there would be no longer a deterrent. The reason that crime is so low in places where there is an overabundance, some might say, I don't say overabundance, I say an abundance, and a good one at that, of firearms, is because they know that, criminals that is, they know that the populace is armed, and therefore they do not want to take a chance with their own lives. Otherwise, what we are left with is pointing this at the criminal when they enter through the doors of our house. Doesn't necessarily shoot well, and This has been Gio for the Red Letters Dialogues. Thank you for viewing. Please remember to peruse our website, redlettersdialogues.com. And also, if you have any questions or comments, place them down below in the comments field. Or if you'd like to write a dissertation, please email us, info@redlettersdialogues.com. Until the next edition, Godspeed.